Be honest with me now. Do you know what the State Comptroller General is, or what they do? My wife knew, but I didn't, so let's find out. Our guest today, as we talk to candidates from up and down the ballot, is Tiffany Boozer, Democratic candidate for Comptroller General. Comptroller General is a statewide office, and that makes her our first statewide candidate on the show. She has a primary opponent of sorts, so she's going to be headed to the June 9th primary. So let's get to it. From what? From in front of a green screen that puts the South Carolina Capitol in the picture behind me, and from here in the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Fort Mill, in the shadow of Charlotte, the buckle of the Bible Belt, and the foot of Mount Belzoni, which is not in the picture behind me. This is the York County Democratic Party YouTube show and podcast. We call it YCDP TV. On the Zoom with me now is Tiffany Boozer, candidate for Comptroller General. I always leave off the general part. Does everybody say Comptroller General, or do we shorten it to just Comptroller?
A lot of folks just say Comptroller, but I do hear Comptroller General a lot. So I guess either way.
That's the official title, as far as I can tell. Candidate for Comptroller General. That's what's going to be on the ballot. That's the most important part. What's going to be, what it's going to say on the ballot. For the whole state, the whole entire state of South Carolina, that makes you our first statewide candidate for the show. So thank you very much for being here. And welcome to YCDP TV. And before we do anything else, I want to ask you about your name because, Tiffany's a really nice name.
It's a very nice name.
All right.
I could be a little biased.
You know what I'm asking? The Boozer part. You never hear about that in your life, do you?
If I had $1 for every time I heard about my last name, I would probably be rich right now. So, yeah, Boozer is fun.
As you're heading into a campaign where you want people to vote for you, do you see that as a problem at all? No,
because when you see Boozer, choose her. You see that?
Booze. Okay. Excellent. And it is a way to stand out, and being remembered is probably more important than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is a York County based podcast. You are running for a statewide office for Comptroller General. We may get a few people tuning in from around the state that don't normally get to see the show. So I'm going to repeat what I have said in every one of these candidate interviews, that what I'm typically looking for are what I call the 3 Ps. That's policy, which you want to get done, process, how you'd get it done, and in this case, how you get elected so that you can then go get it done, and the person. I want to find out a little bit more about the person who's sitting on the podcast here next to me. This will be a conversation. We're going to kind of mix everything all together. It's not going to be really linear. And I like to start with a civics lesson. So you're running for the South Carolina Comptroller General office. It's a statewide office. It is obviously an elected office, or we wouldn't be here. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to ask you about that in a little bit. We'll find out why. There are 8 statewide offices that are up for election. They all have 4-year terms. They're all elected in the presidential election years, so this year. And they are technically called, wait a minute. This is, all right, your first quiz. Do you know what your office is technically called?
Constitutional office?
Yay! Constitutional officers. I'm thinking people out there could win some bar bets with that little nugget. Okay, those offices are governor and lieutenant governor, and they run together on the same ticket. Secretary of State, State Treasurer, Attorney General, State Superintendent of Education, Commissioner of Agriculture, and Comptroller General. So those are the folks that are on the ballot, all independently. It's not one great big block, all elected together. So they could technically be different parties. Don't happen to be right now, but they could be. Well, actually, they are different. We'll figure that out in a minute here. You got a primary opponent. Talk a little bit about that later on. So you're going to be in the primary. That primary is June 9th, 2026. Typical 2 weeks of early voting coming up. Absentee voting is available. In South Carolina, it's called absentee. Everyone else calls it mail-in voting. For those who qualify, not everybody gets to do it. The general election is Tuesday, November 3rd, 2026. And let me plug the York County Democratic Party website for just a second. YCDP.us, the easy way to get there. YorkSCDems.org is the hard way, but it's the sort of traditional way. And especially this here, Meet the Candidates section is where we have lots of details on all of the candidates that are going to be on your ballot every place. And that is the end of the civics lesson. Except you can probably think of this whole candidate series that we've got going on as one big civics lesson. And the quiz is June 9th, and the final exam is November 3rd. Here we go. This is your favorite question. What is the comptroller?
Well, the Comptroller General is a very fancy word for the state's accountant. That's the most simple definition I can give you. And just give a little bit of insight on what we do, because you can hear, oh, it's the accounting office, but you may not understand exactly what we do. We have 4 roles. We provide guidance for the state's accounting system. We also process payroll for the state of South Carolina employees. We also have an accounts payable department. We do all of the disbursements on behalf of the state of South Carolina. And we prepare the financial statements for South Carolina. So in essence, it's an accounting office. And just as an additional plug that I want to give, whether you vote red or blue or whatever the case may be, the oversight should always be by an accountant because it's an accounting office. So I just kind of wanted to just plug that because it's important.
Well, that takes me to the question, what is your background that makes you highly qualified for this office?
I am a certified public accountant. My background, I've spent over 10 years. My background entirely has been audit. So I audit financial statements. And I've worked both in government and in private sector. So when I was in school, my first job out of college was an accounting job. That was my first accounting role. It was a tax role. And I did taxes for one busy season. And, even when I was in school, I knew that I wanted to do audit. So that's where I've spent all of my time. I only did taxes one season. And I'm like, oh, I knew I wanted to do audit for a reason. And I love audit. And so that's where I've spent most of my career.
Well, we're going to call you a math girl, right? Yeah.
I do love math. I love numbers. And I do love what's cool about audit is that not only the love for the numbers, but I love putting together the jigsaw puzzle. Like, I want to understand the why. And so It's not just the numbers itself. It's the process, the thinking. Yeah,
you're looking deep into everything that goes together for a business, a person, I guess, but mostly a business. Before I get into more of the questions about the office, let me ask a little bit about you. I was going to ask at what point you thought you wanted to get into elective office, but I don't think that you have been thinking about that for a long time.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't thinking about it at all. If we're honest. So a piece I left out there, I'm currently the internal auditor at the Comptroller General's office. And basically the conversation came up at work we believe it, holistically, the office should be under the oversight of an accountant. And, our current leader, we love very much. He has a finance background and he knows the accounting system of South Carolina in a way that's very unique, which is why his background works. But going forward, since, he opted not to run, we do strongly believe that the accounting office should be held by a CPA, as in as Ekstrom was a CPA as well. And so being that there was no one in the race that was, had a CPA, some conversations kind of took place amongst ourselves and, the lot fell on me to enter the race. So I entered the last day.
So let me go a little bit farther back. As you were growing up, where did you decide that at least this kind of a life is what you want? I mean, you already mentioned it just a little bit, but how far back does it go? And who were you before you decided what you wanted to do when you grew up?
So I'm from the small town Clinton, South Carolina. That's where I grew up. My family relocated to Columbia, South Carolina, when I was in high school. So I graduated from Lower Richland High School, right here in the Midlands, and I went to undergrad at Limestone University. Did my master's with the University of Phoenix, and then later took the CPA exam later. So really small town girl, still have that I don't meet strangers vibe. I talk to everybody. So that's a little bit, but in terms of how did I end up in accounting, I originally was a nursing student. Even though I was always good at math, thankfully I had a mentor who basically, when I was getting ready to set up my classes one semester, the advisor said to me, "You need an elective." And I said, "Well, do you have any math classes available? Just throw me in that." He's like, "No, I told you an elective." And I'm like, "No, I meant what I said. Just throw me in an algebra, calculus, whatever you have available." And he said, "What's your major?" And I'm like, at that moment, I had switched it from nursing to exercise science. And he said, "I think you need to reconsider your major because no one asks for math classes for fun." And I was like, "Oh, I never had thought of it. I thought everybody was good at math." And so that's kind of what changed the trajectory of my college career. And I ended up changing my major to accounting, took my first audit class, loved it, and was like, "Oh, this is where I need to be."
Yeah, that's the kind of information I'm trying to dig out of people. That is awesome. So we can call you the accidental accountant.
Basically, which is why when I meet folks, and even when I was in public accounting, they would tell me, "You don't have the personality of an accountant." That's because I wasn't expecting to be one.
Yeah. I mean, where's the green eye shade? All right. So back to the office. First of all, interesting point. You already work in the office that you want to lead. And what was the job you got there? You said you're an auditor in that office. How big an office is that?
It's about 32 of us.
Okay, so it's not huge, but there's a bunch of you. And you're an auditor in that office. How long have you been working there?
I've been an auditor there for a year and a half. In fact, my role was created as a result of an audit that was conducted in the office. Okay,
so what you're referring to is there was a bit of a scandal back in 2023. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more. It affects a few things that touch onto the campaign, but let's get into that in a little bit. My next question is, why is this an elected office? It seems to be technical. It seems to require expertise. And in some research that I've done, very few states make it an elected office. Everybody's got one, but in only a few states is it elected. Why is it elected here?
Gary, I'm with you. I really don't think this should be an elected position. And if it's going to remain an elected position, I really believe it should be non-partisan. Because this is a technical role, as I've been saying, as I've been out on the campaign trail. This is not a political role; it's professional. So I'm with you. I would love to have an answer to that question, and hopefully, as I'm out talking to folks, I can start to put that on folks' radar that either this position needs to be changed to an appointed role, or it has to be nonpartisan.
I did my research using an AI, using Claude, and it told me that one of the reasons that some states like to keep it elected is that gives you independence from the rest of the government, from the governor and everybody else among those constitutional officers. Well, that's the reason, but here in South Carolina, it doesn't really hold much water because it's always the same party. Or traditionally the same party. Well, speaking of that, the current incumbent, the guy that's in the office, Brian Gaines, is a Democrat, and he was appointed. Okay, so interesting data points. And that is a result of that scandal that we're mentioning. And I'm going to try not to talk about it in too much depth. It was in the headlines 3 years ago, 2023, something about missing money, but that wasn't really missing, and kind of a tiff between the treasurer and the Comptroller General. So the guy who was Comptroller General resigned over I guess was a scandal, And the governor, Republican governor, appointed Brian Gaines, a Democrat, to fill the office. Brian doesn't want to run for it, though. He's happy to have stepped in and fixed as much as he could. He doesn't want to run for this office. He's not in the race. Do you have a good handle on what the scandal was? Do you understand this idea of there was some missing money?
What I'm going to say, well, obviously based on the findings, there quote unquote was no missing money. So we were able to establish that with the AlixPartners audit that was done, and that's available online on the admin website if anyone is interested in going to look at it. So wasn't any quote unquote missing money. But what I will say to that is, in all the parties that were involved, and all the parties were aware of it. That would, and by all parties, I mean the comptroller, the prior comptroller, the treasurer, the sitting treasurer right now, and the former auditor, who also resigned as well. All three parties were aware of the issue. It wasn't brought to light as it should have been. And I just think it's interesting that both Ekstrom and Kennedy both resigned and took responsibility for their roles in it. And we still have one still standing that has not taken any type of responsibility whatsoever. So you can look back in all of the public hearings, and all of that was there, that AlixPartner made it very clear that all three parties were aware about the issue.
The takeaway that I'm getting is that it was not corruption. Nobody walked away with money. Nobody stole anything. The state didn't lose any money. It was more a matter of people just didn't do things well. They didn't do their jobs as well as they should have. And when that came, and it went on for a long time. And when I think
describing it as an error is the most accurate. And the thing is, those three parties knew about the error and did not bring it to anyone's attention.
Yeah. And so when it finally did surface, they said, okay, yeah, we screwed up and we're bailing. And that's why we need a pro to really stay on top of this stuff and be real honest about it. There's a little bit of hangover from that. As I understand it, the current treasurer, Curtis Loftus, is refusing to issue any long-term bonds because he says that the current comptroller won't give him adequate data to be able to issue those bonds. And he's trying to make some political drama out of that. An office that hasn't typically had political drama in it until this 2023 thing. Is there anything about that you want to comment on?
My comment on that right now would be, for anyone interested, we've had at least two outside parties to come in and do assessments, i.e. AlixPartners. And then Forvis was, on site to do, to ensure that all of the recommendations were completed that AlixPartners gave. Their report is available online as well. So I would recommend, anyone that has an interest to go read those reports, because they have no horse in the race. They have no reason to just make up things and put it in a report. So they're third parties, they're objective. So that way, in the spirit of true journalism, you're not taking my word for it. You're not taking his word for it. You're taking the word that two outside parties and what they spoke about it. So I would recommend taking a look at those reports that are available online.
All right. And then we're back to, hey, what we really want in this job is competency. It's not a political job. There's not a lot of policy. You don't get to, as you mentioned earlier, you don't get to decide where the money comes from, where the money goes. It's just your job to get it accounted for.
We do have a transparency portal that was developed under Brian Gaines, where, if you're interested in where money has been, what it's been spent on, there is now a transparency portal available. You can look at it by agency or at the state level by category and get an understanding of how money is being spent. So we do have a responsibility to make sure that it's easy for taxpayers to have a clear understanding on what money is spent on. We don't decide how money is spent, but we do have a responsibility to make sure that you understand as a taxpayer, if you are interested in knowing, hey, this is how much we spent on admin, this is how much we spent, or this is how much this agency spent on supplies, or what have you. So you can see that detail. And again, that was developed under Gaines' leadership. And
now I want to pull a couple of questions out of left field and get, I don't know, maybe a little political about it. If you really want this job, and I think you do, why don't you run as a Republican? And let me explain what I'm talking about here. I think this breaks down to just plain old process. I am going to make the assumption, because this is not a high-profile job, that the winner of this election in November will be based on straight ticket voting. And you can argue with me if you want, because you know more about it than I do. Are there really other policy issues besides that scandal that we talked about? Or is there something that you can bring people in to split their ticket enough to overcome the South Carolina straight ticket voting?
This role, and I can't stress it enough, is not a political role. In fact, just using the example, as a CPA, I have a professional code of conduct that I have to adhere to, and it has nothing to do with politics. One of the things that CPAs are responsible for in one of our code of conduct, we have to be independent. So there is no red or blue as it relates to the Comptroller General office, because 1 + 1 is just merely 2. It's not red or blue here. And this role does not make decisions on how money is spent. So therefore, I think it's super important that folks understand that if there are not competent folks in the Comptroller's office or in the Treasurer's office, these are business roles. So if you think about it on a case of if it was your personal business, when you're hiring for your business roles for your accountant or your treasurer, there is no way you would hire somebody who is not competent or who does not understand accounting if you're thinking about that in a business role. And I think, that's something I would have to just continue to get across, that this role doesn't make those decisions. You have to think business, because if the business of South Carolina doesn't work, then there's no way that your issue can be covered. Because if our finances aren't right, who cares about issues? Because you can't pay for them.
All right. So again, we want the job to be competent. It is sadly at this point an elected office, and you have to go through the process, which means you are heading for the Democratic primary, and you have a primary opponent. It's Bruce K. Cole. I have not been able to find any social media, a website, anything about him being out there and campaigning. I think before we got started, you mentioned that you may have seen a website that he just got started, and I haven't found it yet. As soon as I do, it'll be on our YCDP candidates information, because we're in the Democratic Party, and this program is an official program of the York County Democratic Party. We can't take sides in the Democratic primary. I just want to point out that we haven't been able to find anything from Bruce Cole, and he's going to be welcome to come on and talk about his candidacy on this program as well. We just haven't been able to find him yet.
I have had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Cole. Very, very nice guy. He definitely seems to be competent. And I have seen him out on the trail in a couple of places. So he is actively campaigning. I'm not sure, what the hang up is, exclusively, but I have seen him out. So he's out there. I will even point this out, that I believe the Democratic Party has done a really good job with getting qualified folks on the ticket. And I can't say the same for the other side as it relates to the Comptroller General's office.
So that brings me back to center field and the actual election that's going to come up. Again, you got to get past the primary. So it's either going to be you or Mr. Cole. And the Republican is Mike Burkhold. He doesn't have a primary opponent, so he's going straight to the general election. He does have, for those of us here in York County and in the 5th Congressional District, he has some old 5th District congressional connection. He ran against John Spratt John's beloved former ex-congressman from the 5th District in the York County area. He ran against him in 1998, so that's a long time ago. He has not run for anything since. He has promised to publish the state's $43 billion annual checkbook online. So one of the things he's saying is that would mean that people journalists in particular, don't have to keep sending in Freedom of Information Act requests to get information about the finances. He wants to publish that online. How do you feel about that?
I think too much information is just as unhelpful as not having information at all. Because if you don't know how to navigate that information, it just won't be helpful. I would say the better approach is to make certain information available based on risk. So I would do a risk assessment, and based on the areas that I feel are the most risky, whether it be capital projects, that's a risky one because you can have cost overruns. So, and publish additional details as it relates to areas that are higher risk so that taxpayers can keep an eye on that. But publishing just everything, that would be just as unhelpful as not having anything at all, in my professional opinion.
Is there information in there that needs to be kept confidential or secret?
And there is some information that does need to be kept confidential.
Okay, so he couldn't publish the whole thing online anyway. But no. I don't know if you want to comment on this, because once again, you're not facing him yet. You have the primary to get through. But I have recently learned how to go look at candidates' financial information. This is dangerous. It's also very difficult to parse. And I'm definitely a newbie. You probably would love going into all this stuff, the financial information that the state makes available. And you could probably say, well, yeah, they make it available, but it's really hard to understand what's there. But a few things seem understandable. Mr. Burkhold has almost $1 million in his campaign chest, although he has spent almost all of it. And I'm going, what? And what would he have spent it on?
I actually love that for him. I don't have any comment to that. I actually love that for him. I mean, someone that's new to the political world and just fundraising, I know that could be a little challenging, but I love that for him.
A little bit of a technical issue because your phone overheated.
Sorry about that.
So I'm not sure exactly where we left off. I was going to ask, do you enjoy campaigning and all this electioneering stuff, or you just want to go to work?
Maybe a combination of both. What I do love is meeting the people, and talking to folks. And once they have that aha moment of what a comptroller is, it's actually beautiful to watch. And I've had people come up to me that may have attended an event and I may have been there, and then they attended another one, and like, hey, when you ask the question, who knows what a Comptroller General is, I can raise my hand now because I understand it. And so that's exciting, because, Ekstrom sat in the seat for 20 years. I can see how it went under the radar. And of course, he was a CPA as well, so it was under the radar. And so now folks are paying attention, and it's one of those things that folks are interested in now. So I do like the people side. Again, remember I told you I didn't choose accounting; it chose me. So I ended up developing character that's not normal to most accountants, and I enjoy the job. Again, it's a fun thing to me to problem solve. So I actually me and spreadsheets have a love relationship. I actually love looking at them. I find joy, and honestly, when it doesn't make sense, I'm going to have even more joy because now I get to figure out how do I make this make sense.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about before your phone battery or your phone gets too hot again that we haven't talked about?
No, the most important thing for me is educating South Carolina. Just making sure it's understood that this office and the treasurer's office, these are business roles. And we have to take care of the business of South Carolina. If we don't take care of the business of South Carolina, we won't be prepared to even consider the issues of South Carolina. So that's the most important piece. I want to just make sure that I'm pushing. And if we can get to a place where it ends up on the ballot of whether or not this role continues to be elected, let's put that on the ballot too, because I don't think it should continue to be elected. If there's anything I want to get out, those are the three.
All right. Excellent. We have been talking to Tiffany Boozer. I still love it. The candidate for the Democratic nomination, going to be in the primary for Comptroller General, statewide office for South Carolina. And thank you very much for coming on YCDP TV to talk to us. And hopefully people who have watched this get a chance to know who you are a little bit better.
Thank you, Gary, for having me. I sure do appreciate it.
Okay, this has been the York County Democratic Party's YouTube show and podcast. We call it YCDP TV. See you guys later. Over and out.
See ya.